What's up, Cradle fans? This is Bamf is here. We're doing a podcast. It's myself and Remixt. I'll let him introduce himself in a second. You know me from the Discord, the Reddit, and my obnoxious theory videos on everything that has to do with Cradle. That's not exactly what this podcast is going to be about, but we'll get to that in a second. But before we do that, let's move over to Remixt. What's up, dude? Introduce yourself. Tell everyone who you are.
How's it going, everybody? I'm Remixt. I'm the guy behind that last video you might have seen from Bamfilosophy involving the Unreal Engine Cradle. I'm just a big fan of Cradle, and I kind of tracked down Bamfilosophy through certain methods that'll be discussed later. But
he stalked me.
Series.
Yeah, he stalked me in a non-creepy way. I refer to him as the architect in my head because anytime I drop into his world that was built by Will, I'm always like, ooh, what can I have the architect do next? Well, cool. So yeah, I've wanted to do a podcast for a while, but I didn't want to do one on my own because I consider myself a busy individual. I don't even make enough YouTube videos for many of your liking. So why don't we get into how you tracked me down and then what you proposed to me, and then I'll explain like why I said yes.
Sure.
And then we'll talk about what the podcast is going to be.
Right. So it started with, obviously I discovered your YouTube channel. I was hungry for more Cradle content and just Google searched Cradle content on YouTube and came up to the Bamfilosophy channel. And I watched all of your videos and I was like, I'm not satisfied yet. And I had already had the idea of creating a world that is in the Cradle, the iteration 110 kind of area. But I don't have enough knowledge myself to make it faithful to the book. And as a fan, I would be pissed off if it wasn't right. So I decided to see if I could get in contact with you. It started by leaving a YouTube comment. Which I did see, but not till after the fact. Right. So I left a YouTube comment that didn't get answered fast enough to my liking. So I looked at your YouTube page and saw that there was a Google phone number linked to that and started texting it. And I was like, hey, maybe you shouldn't have this number.
Yeah. Okay. So to be fair, he didn't know it was my Google voice phone number. He thought it was my actual phone number.
Right. Yeah.
And so as a concerned fan of the videos, he wanted to let me know that I was exposing myself to the trolls of the world.
Right. So I didn't troll him, but I did let him know that it could possibly happen. But then he let me know that it was the Google number. And then I got a hold of him, I think, on a Facebook messaging group or something like that. And then finally, he just said, just go to the Discord. So, I did a little bit of a stalking thing. Luckily, since it wasn't malicious, it turned out to work out okay. And also, luckily, he agreed to be my quote unquote consultant for the Unreal Engine version of Cradle.
I did.
So
I agreed to fact check for him.
Right. So,
which is fun because I'm always looking for new content. I mean, I can tinfoil hat theory my way into your hearts all day and all night, but at some point I want to expand the content that I provide. And so when he came to me first via text message and let me know like what his project was, I was interested. And I told him I don't have a whole lot of time during November because I'm trying to do NaNoWriMo. And so I can't really do a podcast in November, but I can definitely help with the project that he had going on. And secretly in the back of my head, I'm like, all right, let's see if he actually shows me something cool. And then if I give feedback, let's see if he actually changes it. And then let's see how we interact over the course of November. And if things aren't awkward, then we'll try out the podcast thing. Well, over the course of November, he built Sacred Valley. He imported a bunch of trees. He spent hours making Orris trees look right. Then he brought me into a Discord and showed me how he did it. And I was like, holy shit, if he's willing to put this much effort into building a world, that's the kind of person I'm willing to shoot the shit with on a podcast for a couple hours at a time. So over the course of November, we kept talking and had a couple planning meetings. And here we are. We're shooting our first video, this intro video. So Remixt, why don't we chat about what our sort of loose vision is for this endeavor? What, like, how do you see this podcast going? What kind of stuff are we going to talk about?
Sure. So the idea is to start somewhere that we are more familiar with, and to expand as we go further along. So starting with the Cradle series, something that we both love, and we want to share our knowledge or even learn from other people that are fans of the series. Basically, in a way to engage with the community and to just get this series out there to more people, because if anything, we just want more fans of Cradle so we can get more Cradle content. And I'm sure a lot of you that are watching feel the same. So,
absolutely. That's actually one of the reasons why I started the YouTube channel. I was having fun theory crafting on Reddit and in the Discord. But then I realized that in between books, after like 3 months post book launch, all the conversations seemed to die out. And it was hard to get people to engage. People were always yelling at Will for more books or more cool merch or fan art or whatever. And the community at the time was only 2,000, maybe 3,000 people deep. So I started making the YouTube videos as a way to explore some of my ideas for what I had put together in my head, connecting the dots on different clues that were left throughout the Cradle books, as just a way to create content to fill. So this podcast is, in my opinion, an extension of that, but also an expansion. I've been asked to create content beyond Cradle, and I don't really have a lot of time or knowledge or interest in doing that on my YouTube channel yet. So after talking with Remixt, doing that here is really helpful because I can engage in a dialogue with him. So the way I see this going is we'll talk about progression fantasy as like our core niche right now, starting with Cradle because it's the most popular progression fantasy series out there. It was one of the series that kind of launched the subgenre. And there's a couple other cultivation books or progression fantasy books that are worth talking about once we kind of saturate ourselves with talking about Cradle. So that's kind of where I see it going in the short to midterm. And we may expand it further beyond that, but let's start with Cradle. Let's talk about some other progression fantasy stuff, and let's go from there.
Right.
Specifically with like the title, like we don't know what the title is. We have a couple working titles. I think right now the YouTube channel is called like Pog Fantasy. I was like, we should name it Progression Fantasy Podcast. That's the most boring name in the world, but it fits with the scope of what we're trying to do. And Remixt was like, yeah. And we just started talking. So he didn't want to like make me feel bad. But he went with it, and then he changed it to Pog Fantasy as like a kind of a meme. And so we've kept it as that for now. And I'm going to make my own YouTube video announcing this podcast where you can all come and find this video probably. But yeah, that's kind of where we see the podcast going. But with regards to this podcast, we have some stories to tell, I think. Like let's move into talking about how we discovered Will White's work, and then specifically how we discovered Cradle. So Remixt, why don't you kick us off with that? Like, how'd you find Will? How'd you find Cradle? And what were your first thoughts?
Sure. So I've been reading fantasy since I was a little kid, but I more recently got into audiobooks because of the long commute that I had, at least pre-COVID. And that started me on a genre called lit RPG. Shout out to anybody that likes the lit RPG genre, because I'm still obsessed with that too. But Will White's book, Unsouled, had been recommended to me a couple of times just on the at the end of the audiobook that I was listening to, and I kept ignoring it. And then finally I was like out of stuff at the time to listen to. So I finally went ahead and got it, and I got sucked into Unsouled like pretty quick. It's like roughly an 8-hour book, at least on Audible. And I listened to the whole thing in one sitting because I couldn't stop. I was just obsessed with how deep there's like this principle called the iceberg, where you kind of like get a sense of like how big the world is without actually knowing everything about the world, and just seeing Serial's point of view from the very beginning, and then seeing like how Lyndon was, started from less than nothing. Those are my kind of books, like starting from nothing and building your way up in those progression fantasy novels. I had no idea what I was getting into. And so I listened to Unsouled all the way through and was so happy to find out it wasn't the only book, and kind of went on a binge for the next week of listening or reading or doing both at the same time of the entire series. At the time, I think it went up to book 5, Ghostwater. So yeah, I got all the way through Ghostwater, and then I was like, more. And there wasn't.
Oh man, that's a hell of a book to like run out on.
Yeah. So, that's pretty much how it started. Long story short, anyway. How about you?
Nice. So I first came across the Traveler's Blade or Traveler's Gate trilogy when I was looking for. It's the same thing as you. Like maybe I had read a Brandon Sanderson novel and I had run out of things to read, and I've been reading on Kindle since 2008, I think, on the online like Kindle app. So I was looking for something I could read to immerse myself back in 2015 maybe. And when Unsouled first dropped, it was recommended to me through the Amazon algorithm. And like I was not interested at all, if I'm being honest. Like I could not have cared less. In fact, I was like, I like Will's writing, but I don't really want to read this. Like magical martial arts with like a Chinese character on the cover, whatever. I don't know. There's probably not even swords. So it's going to be silly. Whatever. So I completely ignored it. I just ignored it. And I had messaged or had like tweeted at Will asking what his inspiration was for the Traveler's Gate. And it took him like a month to respond. And he was like, sorry, man, I was in like a writing retreat doing some binge writing. I was inspired by like Magic the Gathering and some other stuff, because I thought that he'd been inspired by World of Warcraft. So I had that. This matters. Like that little bit of context matters, because I had this idea of like who Will was, like the man behind like the gnome face. Because at the time there were no pictures of him online anywhere. It was just a hidden gnome icon on all of his stuff. So I go to Dragon Con in, I think it was 2016. And I go to a panel that has Brandon Sanderson, Christopher Paolini, and a couple other people. And it was a panel on comparing self-publishing to traditional publishing. And so you had Christopher Paolini there as kind of like the self-published guy, because he self-published Aragon in the beginning. And then you have Brandon Sanderson, who's like the beacon for traditional publishing success, in the 21st century, and a couple other authors. So I'm sitting next to this guy, and I don't see his shirt. I don't really know, but I mean, I'm just awkwardly there by myself with my backpack and my notepad, ready to take notes eagerly on Brandon Sanderson and all that he has to say about writing. And at the end, when it's time for questions, the dude to my left gets up and he's like, hey, so I'm a self-published author, and I've sold 200,000 copies of my books. Do y'all think I should continue with my self-publishing journey, or should I try and become traditionally published? And I first look up at him, look back at the authors. First of all of their mouths were like dropped wide open, except for Brandon Sanderson and Paolini, because those were the only two authors, obviously, that had sold that many copies. So first of all, I'm like, who the hell is this guy to my left? Well, he's wearing a House of Blades t-shirt. I'm like, holy shit. And so I actually interrupted Will, while he was talking. And I was like, did you write that book on your shirt? And he's like, yeah. I'm like, holy crap, man, I'm a big fan. And I shook his hand awkwardly while he's standing up. 200 people in the room are staring at him, which we know he must have hated. And then the authors were laughing, obviously. And so then afterwards, he asked me to take a picture with him. And so I did. And that picture's online. In fact, if you search his name, it might be one of the first pictures that pop up. But then I talked to him for a second. I was like, hey, you told me, like, we tweeted at each other. We've talked before. I'm the guy that asked you. And he played it off, and he was cool. And but because of that, I was like, man, I met him. He's a cool guy. I should probably read his other books, so I'm not like a total poser. I just like proclaimed in front of Brandon Sanderson and company that I'm a big fan of Will, so I should probably read his other books. So I ended up reading Unsouled, and I think right when I started reading Unsouled, Black Flame was like right about to come out. So I read Unsouled in a day, and then I read Soulsmith in a day. And I think I had to wait maybe my timelines are wrong, but I remember I didn't read Black Flame right away. And so then I eventually read Black Flame, and then I was hooked. But it wasn't until Skysworn came out that I really started to like connect the dots. And then I went back, and I was actually having kind of a rough week. And I was like feeling down about myself. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to read about Lyndon, because he's like a normal guy in a world of superheroes, and he figures his shit out. So I can get over whatever I want. So I like reread it all. I was like, damn, that's so awesome. And then obviously a whole bunch more stuff happened that I documented. You can find it online, but I won't go into it here. But basically, I became pretty into Cradle. The world of Cradle, the Willverse in general, became a pretty big fan. And then kind of like used it as a lightning rod for creativity to get myself started on some creative paths that I had been procrastinating on. So that's how I found Cradle. Mainly because I shamed myself into reading it, because Will's a nice guy IRL. True story.
That's amazing.
True story.
Imagine being shamed into reading something as good as Cradle.
Oh yeah, no, I mean, how lucky could I get? Fortunately, I met him like I ran into him there, because I don't know if I ever would have read it, or that probably would have ended our interaction. If I'm being honest, thinking about like where things were in life at that time. So it's crazy how a chance encounter can change the trajectory of like your hobbies and stuff.
I did have something to add. So shortly after reading Unsouled, I sent an email to Will, fully not expecting any sort of reply. I can't remember what it said. All I know is that it was full of typos and terrible assumptions. All I knew is that this book was basically Dragon Ball Z, and I used to love Dragon Ball Z as a kid. So I sent him a stupid, cheesy email with the subject "information requested." More information.
I bet he loved that.
And he responded to me, and I totally did not expect him to respond at all. So if you didn't have a fan already from the first book, having an author respond to you as a fan is just, I don't know, it's something super incredible that I can't say has happened very often with other books that I've sent fan emails.
Oh, wow. So this is like a trend for you, sending fan emails?
Yeah, I tend to do that. I'm a little
That's awesome.
eccentric when it comes to that kind of stuff. I like to let people know that I like their stuff. So I will end up doing that for pretty much anything. I've sent Brandon Sanderson emails, but if I haven't gotten anything, I would be super shocked if he'd actually managed to read that email because of how many fans he's got at this point. But
for sure.
But yeah, nothing insidious. Even if I hated your book, I'm not gonna, to let you know about that. But if I, really
that's
like
cool.
It, maybe. So
that makes me think about like where we are in terms of like social media is obviously can, detract people from their productivity and whatnot, but it's cool because it like can bridge like the gap between fan and creator, so like in the past, like I'm not someone who would ever send someone an email, like a fan email, just because like I feel like in the past there was like a huge gap between fan and creator, and like me trying to bridge that gap is like a waste of my time. But then after Twitter and like some social media, especially Twitter, I feel like it's what helped me like get to that point where I could try and bridge the gap. So it kind of it's a cool situation where that we live in now, where we can interact with our favorite creators. So yeah, anyway, cool stories on both sides. Let's chat a little bit about like what our favorite fantasy books were when we grew up. Like what was the progression of series that like led you to the quality of nerd that you are today?
Okay. I guess I'll go first.
Yeah.
So the very first fantasy book I could remember reading as a kid was a series called Animorphs. I remember talking to you about this a little bit.
Hell yeah.
But the thing that drew me to the books obviously was the cover, having somebody transform into an animal, what looked like in real time. Like you got to see the different transformations. I thought that was so cool. And then I remember being super disappointed in the Nickelodeon series that never got finished.
Yeah,
the television series was so terrible, but just goes to show that just because you get a movie deal isn't always a good thing, I think. But the book series kept going. I actually just recently learned that series was ghostwritten toward the end by like 7 or 8 different people, which I thought was interesting. Same thing with Goosebumps, if you ever read Goosebumps. But anyway, so Animorphs definitely got me started right into the Harry Potter series. Pretty much parallel with the Harry Potter series. I'm not sure when exactly, but the Inheritance Cycle from Christopher Paolini was probably my first big jump into what I would call epic fantasy. I don't want to say that that's really an epic fantasy, like looking back, but as far as bridging the gap, maybe it for sure could be. And then once I started reading Christopher Paolini, it started snowballing pretty crazily from there. It's the Wheel of Time series I tried to get into. Just wasn't for me. I thought maybe I was too young or something, but it just seemed kind of boring, to be honest.
Pause real quick.
Go ahead.
Anybody listening to this, I have already signed up to convince him to finish reading it.
Right.
I don't know how successful I'll be, but I'll tell my own Wheel of Time like completion story whenever I'm doing my part of this. So continue. It's a mistake that will be remedied eventually.
Right. I will try to read it again, I promise. But anyway, I tried to get into Wheel of Time. Couldn't do it. Then I read like The Golden Compass, Artemis Fowl, Pendragon, a lot of in between YA and adult oriented fantasy. I kind of took a break when I joined the military on reading fantasy just because I really didn't have time. But when I got back, I got into the lit RPG series. I pretty much any sort of lit RPG I've read. It might have started with The Land, which is a very infamous series at this point, just because the author kind of has a lot of controversy around him.
There's a big question mark over my head right now. I have no idea.
Oh, well, I don't really want to get into it too much because I don't want to accuse anybody of anything. All I know is that there's controversy around it. I still enjoy the books. I'm sorry if that's a bad thing, but I enjoy the books. And so a lot of lit RPG, a lot of progression fantasy. I don't want to drop too many names here, but let's just say Lord of the Rings. Let's see. First progression fantasy that I really, really enjoyed. It's hard to say, but I'm kind of drawing a blank. But
just say Unsouled. Unsouled brought you in, pulled you in
for sure.
But sufficiently advanced magic, maybe. I know.
Oh yeah, sufficiently advanced magic is really good. But I read Unsouled a little bit before that. But
same.
Andrew Rowe, I really like his style of writing. So for sure, all of that sort of stuff. I've pretty much read everything at this point, but. Yeah, it kind of snowballed, like I said, after the Harry Potter and Aragon series. I started reading everything at once. So
that's what's up. Okay, I have a similar path to nerddom. I too was a fan of Animorphs. I think looking back, my elementary school had a really impressive like fantasy fiction section because I found Harry Potter there. And I found like the Scholastic Book Fair is like got me into both Animorphs and Harry Potter, but it started with Animorphs. I thought it was really cool that, the first book was like a kid turning into a lizard. And the second book was a chick turning into a cat. I thought that was awesome. So I became obsessed with Animorphs. I read all of them. I can still tell you Axe's full name, Aximile Estigroth Isthel, the Andalite that was stuck on Earth, where his I think it was his brother Elfangor got eaten in the first book right away.
Oh wow.
Super crazy, yeah. Spoiler alert.
You say it. All I remember is the cube, the 6-sided cube that you could touch to give somebody the power at the end. And then I remember Tobias. Tobias was my favorite character.
Tobias, the red-tailed hawk. No, yes, I was a huge nerd into that. I read the Andalite Chronicles, the Hork-Bajir Chronicles. I even drew the Hork-Bajir Chronicles cover a couple times. I wrote a Hork-Bajir fan fiction where they learned how to anamorph, and then they would morph into it was so I was 9 or something, or even younger whenever I wrote this, but they would morph into sea monkeys. Then they got stuck as sea monkeys, and then they had to adventure as sea monkeys in the bottom of the ocean. Yeah, there's an actual fan fiction of that somewhere at my parents, which will never see the light of day, but still pretty interesting. Then at the Scholastic Book Fair, came across. Well, actually, it was my mother. My mother begged me to get the Harry Potter books. At the time, it was just the first 2, so the Sorcerer's Stone and the Chamber of Secrets. She begged me to get it, and I think I made a deal with her where okay, I'll get these books if I can get another book. And that other book is lost to the sands of time because obviously Harry Potter was amazing. I started reading it before I was 11. And so when I got to where I was 11, in the back of my head, I'm okay, so, the Tooth Fairy's not real. Santa Claus isn't real. Huge betrayal from my parents lying to me about Santa Claus. But maybe I'll get a letter in the mail saying that I can, go to Hogwarts. Obviously didn't happen. But I was able to continue reading that series throughout high school. In between those books, I read R.A. Salvatore's Dritz Do'Urden series. So I started with the Dark Elf Trilogy, which was the prequel trilogy written after Icewind Dale, which was the second trilogy that I read, moving on into the Servant of the Shard and all that stuff. And I read those books all throughout high school. My nerdy reading in high school took a break when I switched over to hyper-competitive Halo 2 gameplay online. So that was where all my nerdness went. And then that switched over to Elder Scrolls and got real into that for a while. Then I came back to reading fantasy when the final Harry Potter book came out. I think I was 18 at the time. So I read that, had a blast. I actually finished reading that book. This is going to sound so bad, but we're beyond the statute of limitations. I was a lifeguard, and I brought the book on stand. And when there's nobody, and I would sit on the lifeguard stand by the deep end, and there's no one in the deep end. And so, I can see that everybody's fine over, in the shallows. And so I'm just reading the book, or read a couple pages, make sure everything's okay. Read a couple pages, and then, cause I don't know, I had promised my manager that I would always help him out if he needed me, but I told him don't call me into work because the Harry Potter book's out, and he called me into work anyway.
Oh,
yeah. So I ended up finishing the book on the stand. Yeah, as bad as that sounds. Yeah. And then in college, what pulled me into reading on Kindle was actually the Twilight series. I'm admitting this. I had a girlfriend who convinced me to read these books. And the final book I thought was super cool because of all the powers. I didn't give a shit that they were vampires, but I thought it was cool that they were vampires that had special powers. Okay. So, and the fourth book had a training montage where she learned how to use her powers. And anyway, so I readily admit that. And then from there, I also read the Inheritance Cycle. I think it was Aragon, and then what was the second book? Eldest.
Oh, yep.
Eldest. I read that book on a lake. On a pontoon boat on a lake at my, in on a Virginia lake. I didn't go jet skiing. I didn't go swimming. I just sat there on the boat reading this book, and everyone in my family thought I was the biggest loser. But that second book, it caught me. The first ever iterate like situation where somebody gets bathed in soulfire was in Eldest when he gets turned into a half elf. He gets completely remade. And so that concept where it's like, oh my God, he became a superhero. That was so cool to me.
I did get the fourth book signed by Christopher Paolini on release day. So that was pretty cool.
That is cool.
Yeah, he came to the Air Force Base that I happened to be stationed at and was signing the books. So shook his hand and got my book signed.
Did he dress up?
He was in nice clothes, but I don't know.
Okay. Well, because like the whole story with him is he used to go to like schools and dress up in like armor to like sell his books. So it's nice to know that by that point he didn't have to do that anymore. Okay.
I'll try to put the picture up in the video for you guys of me shaking his hand because it is up on Facebook. But yeah.
Cool. So are you going to edit that in, or are you going to switch your view or what? Okay, cool. All right. Awesome. So yeah, that's a very extensive history of what I read. I in 2012, I was in Japan studying abroad and I ran out of money. And so I was basically confined to my room. And all I could do was exercise, watch Netflix, and read. And at the time, torrenting books or like torrenting anything was actually legal in Japan. And so I torrented all the Wheel of Time series, and I read the first six or seven in Japan. And then when I came back stateside, I stopped reading it and moved on. And then I tried reading it again. And I like was determined, I'm going to finish this series because I hear that the ending is great. The payoff's worth it. And I like did a timeline of reading everything. Reading the whole series took me 2 years in between other books. And book 10 was one of those years. I don't know if you've read, I know you haven't read Wheel of Time, but for those of you listening, book 10 is the book that has a 250-page prologue introducing new characters we've never heard about and making it super boring. And so, yeah, basically I like stopped reading it for a year and then got it on audiobook and just powered through it and moved on. But the last 3 books written by Brandon Sanderson are completely amazing. The Final Battle is totally worth it. You're going to read it eventually, but it's legit. It's legit. Okay. I think we've rambled on about our histories. Let's get into some Cradle stuff. What do you say?
Yeah, sounds good.
Why don't we get a little update from you on the Cradle sim, and then we can talk about like some stuff we like about Cradle and shit like that.
Right. So for those of you who don't know, I am creating a version of Sacred Valley based on the books in Unreal Engine. The goal is to eventually have the entire planet, at least all the parts of the planet that are visited in the books, able for you to explore and to get information on, maybe little excerpts from the audiobook. There's a lot of plans going in. And there will be a link in the description of a video where Bamf covers the intro to that, so you can get a little bit of a taste. So currently, I am still working on the look and feel of the world. So I've done a little bit of remodeling of the terrain itself, the trees. It's a lot of little tweaks here and there, just trying to get it to feel correct. Things that are going to really be a hindrance to work on later. As far as video game development, you got to get the foundation correct before moving on, because otherwise it'll be a real pain after you get further along. So that's what I'm currently working on, and I am looking for volunteers, artists, fact checkers, whatnot. Feel free to contact me on Discord, which will also be linked. If you want to contribute in some way, go for it. And I don't want to talk too much about what's going on.
This doesn't mean you get to just drop in and explore and not be helpful. If you're going to come in and help him, you got to actually help the man.
Right.
That is the social contract you are going to be signing whenever you get access to this super secret special sim of Sacred Valley, plus whatever.
There will be somewhat of an interview process, unless you're just going to send me 3D models and that'll work too. But That's
true. You can bribe him with 3D models.
Yeah, if you just send me a model that I can just drop in the world, then I'll give you a copy of this of what I've got. Because that's the hardest thing for me is I'm a programmer, not a modeler. So it takes me a really long time to get that stuff done. So yeah. Anyway, that's where we're at. And look at the link in the description if you want more information.
Sweet. All right, so let's talk about Cradle. What do you love about Cradle? And then what do you not like about Cradle?
Cool. So do you want to go first on what you love about Cradle? Because I feel like I've been going first every time here. So.
I mean, okay, so this might get deep. It might not. I'm not sure where I'm going to go with this. But what I like about Cradle is that your ability to improve your existence in life is in a lot of ways up to you and the amount of work that you put in. You have agency over your future. Now, there are some things that can detract from that, but I just love that the magic system allows you to. It's kind of like what we were told about, like with the American dream, where if you work hard enough, you can claw your way up. In Cradle, that's like the way life is. It's brutal and it's dangerous and a lot of, beings die. But our main character is a prime example. Lyndon, he's not a talented sacred artist. This is going to be something I say a lot. He's not inherently good at the sacred arts. What he is good at is working his ass off, pushing through pain, thinking outside of the conventional wisdom, innovating, and stringing together a bunch of disparate concepts into a workable whole. It's taken him 8 books to get there, and he's had some insane luck, a little bit of plot armor luck, encountering one of the 7 strongest beings in existence right at the moment that he gets killed. He's able to show off his grit to that, that's lucky. But I just like the concept of magical hard work can make you magically stronger, and going along the journey and experiencing the depth of the world has been really, really rewarding for me. And that's what I like about it. How about you?
So a lot of the same thing as far as a magic system goes, but I think I want to take a different direction with talking about what I like, in the sense that Will is really good at subverting expectations as far as fantasy goes. So an example would be, it's hard to guess that if you've never read the series before, it would be hard to guess that Yaren would beat Lyndon and the Uncrowned tournament, especially because
Lyndon. Oh yeah, spoiler alert!
Character. Oh, I'm sorry. I'll put a spoiler alert in the big. Hopefully, you've read that by now if you're getting to hear. Otherwise, there's a lot of things that happen in the book that you kind of don't see coming. You kind of expect certain things to work out for Lyndon. So let's say. So Lyndon dies in the first book. Another spoiler alert. I'm sorry. I'm going to spoil lots of stuff. So if you don't want to be spoiled on something,
this is amazing.
Then please don't watch this part of the video. I'll put another link to the end of my little spiel here. I didn't see that coming when I read the first book. Of course, we all find out that he's okay because of Serial. But there's a lot of little things that you're expecting to happen that don't ever happen in the book, and not to the detriment of the book. So I feel like I'm always trying to guess what's going to happen. And so far, every time something has happened,
I too
expecting.
I'm always trying to guess what's going to happen.
Right. And sometimes it doesn't work out, and you have to do some sort of a romance.
God damn it!
Link in the description.
How long in? How long in? And we're already bringing that up.
Yeah. So I like that. When something happens that you didn't guess would happen, but it still makes sense. I feel like that's really hard to do. And not many authors pull it off very well. I would say Brandon Sanderson is one of those people that can pull it off just as well as Will can, if not better. But Will is so good.
Let's make it a competition.
Well, it doesn't have to be. I'm just saying that I think Will's writing style has evolved since the first book, and it's almost always been up. It's extremely what's the word? The payoff is extremely good for every book, and it just keeps getting better and better. I'd say that there. One thing that I like to fight against is the people that didn't like the ending of Uncrowned because it didn't show, all the way the whole tournament.
For sure.
I do kind of agree with the sentiment that it should have been like Uncrowned Part 1 and then Wintersteel is Uncrowned Part 2 plus more or something. But I think that the goal of that Will was setting for Uncrowned, the title Uncrowned makes sense if that makes sense.
Yeah. So I'm going to drop a little quick theory in here for a hot second, just because it fits. What I've learned from talking with people in the Discord, mainly from Condra, one of the artists, is that she pointed out that the title is like what somebody achieves or gets at the end of the book. Now, the first book, you have to stretch a little bit. It says, Yaren gets herself an Unsouled at the end of Unsouled. But everything, every other book, like in Soulsmith, Lyndon becomes a Soulsmith and he gets the Iron Badge at the end of the book. Then in Black Flame, Lyndon becomes a full Black Flame artist at the end of the book. In Skysworn, they become Skysworn at the end of the book. Ghostwater, he gets Ghostwater at the end of the book in the form of Dross, so on and so forth. And so, yeah, Uncrowned is actually Yaren gets to become an Uncrowned at the end of the book. No, it's all coming.
I had a theory that got broken, which was it's just whatever word is said the most in each book.
Oh, that's funny.
But I think Winter still killed that one.
Book 1 should have been named Gratitude.
Oh no! I actually want to get a word count on Gratitude now. It's funny. That's
apologies.
Yeah. Apologies, Gratitude. I feel like maybe every book would be either one of those, at least up until Wintersteel. Maybe I don't think I heard.
Well, I think that's one of the reasons why. Again, this is getting into like tinfoil hat territory, that everybody was like, Akura Grace, she's perfect for Lyndon because he always says gratitude. He's always trying to be grateful and show grace. And then he gets to marry a woman named Grace. It's perfect. Except it's not. All right, sorry, I've like totally derailed you. You're talking about all the things you like and how he subverts tropes and expands his writing style.
Is to open up discussions. So that's pretty cool. But yeah, so the things that I liked about it.
You were talking about how like the people, like the trolls or like the people who didn't like the fandom hating the end of Uncrowned is a part of the stuff that you don't like.
Right. I guess it's a good segue into things that I don't like about Cradle, which is a lot of it is revolving around parts of the community, not the whole community, just parts of the community that that
the wrong parts.
Oh, I don't even want to say wrong. They're just the parts I don't like.
I'll say it.
But the part of the community that maybe isn't happy with how Lyndon lost to Yaren, or how Yaren is allowed to be stronger than the main character because Yaren's a woman, or even because she's just not the main character. I think that it's okay to be unhappy with the ending, and even for that to be the reason. But I think that voicing that as being incorrect is where I get a little peeved at the community, is like saying that Will's doing it wrong or it shouldn't have been like that, because it is, at the end of the day, it's Will's book, right?
Yeah, I mean, like, okay, let's address that then. Haters out there, you've probably read this before, and what I'm saying probably isn't going to sway you, but it might help you in your own life. Most people need to fail in order to discover the path to success. That is how humanity has advanced as far as we have. We fail, and then we learn from our failure, and then we fix it. Lyndon, at that time, was coming off of achieving a mind construct that allowed him to cheat his way into being a good sacred artist. Then he goes into a competition with the best sacred artists on the planet. Sacred artists that have true talent, have been trained their entire lives, and are destined to rule the world someday. Okay? Then he gets put up against his partner in crime, Yaren. Okay? Yaren has been trained by a sword sage her entire sacred, or has been trained by sages her entire sacred art existence, with the little blip of Athen, right? She also has a blood shadow. So she should be able to fight a tier above. She's just better at it than he is. Okay? For her goal was to match her master. She has been in his shadow, or had been in his shadow for so long. He died because of her, in a sense. She is trying to carry on his path. It was so profound to her that it changed her overlord revelation. Right? It became her overlord revelation that she wasn't him. So yeah, her beating Lyndon was what they both needed. She needed to become an uncrowned so she could match, so she can feel like an equal to the memory she has of her master. And Lyndon needed to fail that he could know he can't lean on Dross as a crutch. He still needs to combine his path and do a collective whole, train hard, and get better himself, which, holy shit, he does in Wintersteel. Spoiler alert. And that's why everybody loves Wintersteel so much. My favorite part of Wintersteel was all the Sky's Edge stuff, because it's him training and learning, become a better sacred artist, becoming a leader. All right. And rant on that note.
Sure.
But I agree with you.
Right. Yeah. So it did actually give me another idea that we're going to add to the on the fly.
Sweet. What's up?
Part of the podcast is we should do a what we want to see from Will, other than obviously the next book, because everybody wants the next book, right? So before I transition the what you didn't like about Cradle, I'll just add a little tidbit on the end. What I want to see from Will is more of the world outside of the main characters. So like, you know how we get those tidbits at the beginning of chapters, or sometimes in prologues or epilogues, where
like information requested.
Yeah, those type of things. I don't know how many of you would be familiar with Brandon Sanderson's writing, but he has interludes between all of his books that show side characters. I think
we'll put those in. He put those in the Elder Empire. His Elder Empire series. He has a similar concept.
I'm definitely going to check out Elder Empire. By the way. So I really like learning about like paths that maybe don't have anything to do with the main part of the series, but are still interesting. So like one of my favorite parts of the whole series is when Athen and Lyndon are in the I can't remember where they are, but they are going over.
They're in like underground room number 4 or something, looking at the Aurelius library. Yeah.
Right. They're looking at all these different paths that exist. If there could be, if there was some sort of thing that went over paths, kind of like there's like a Cosmere overview kind of thing that Brandon Sanderson did. If there was some sort of like Cradle, some sort of a Cradle, I don't know, library or something that is just read from by some random character that doesn't exist in the books. That would be really cool. But yeah. I'm going to
expand on that a little bit, because what I want from Will is something like a style guide. Like, you know how if you want to design in an application, you're given a style guide so you can build things and it matches the style of what's already been created. A style guide for creating paths, or a style guide for creating a sect or creating characters, something that will allow someone to create a potentially canonizable fan fiction that could maybe somebody is writing a dope fan fiction, but they don't have enough tools at their disposal to make it close enough to real.
I believe that's actually been done in a, not for Will, but for there's another author, and I'm drawing a blank on his name now, but you've read him as well. The Dungeon.
Dakota Kraut. Yeah.
Yes, Dakota Kraut. He has a couple of people that wrote books in that universe, I believe. One being like Wolfman Warlock, and then
Dakota Kraut. To Garrett, I hope to be getting your books in the mail sometime soon. Sorry, dude, I'm working on it.
Nice. I'm definitely jealous of that. But yeah, Dakota Kraut, I believe, has a couple of people that have at least added to that.
Yeah, they have.
Lore. So something similar to that would be really cool. If that's what you're talking about.
Kind of, yeah. I know that Will is open to the idea of having people write in his universe. I think that he wants to get done with the Cradle series first.
Makes sense.
I mean, I don't know. I'm just assuming that he wants to finish his own story about the iteration before he lets other people write in it. But I know that he made Cradle so big so that you can have stories of other characters that take place in other parts of the world where they would never have heard of any of the stuff that happened in the Black Flame Empire or Ashwind. It's just the world is so big, so vast, so diverse that you can have completely independent storylines of different people. I also want the quintessential superpower fantasy, even if it's in a short story. Like, I want to hear about Suriel's rise to the top because she became super powerful. She must have had like, her story is going to be like, okay, I'm going to start a game with maximum stats, with 300%, XP, and her like rolling on loot in dungeons is like 10x normal.
So kind of like the inverse of Lyndon's story, where he started at a disadvantage. You want Suriel's
well, I mean that's kind of the point.
Is a prodigy, right? If that's if I remember correctly, she's seen as a prodigy.
I think that's true. I think that there's a word of Will where he talks about how he's thought about writing Suriel's story just as like a fun exercise of what would it be like if I wrote a story about a character who just raffle stomps everyone on their way to the top. And then she ascends, and then she's in the Abaddon, and then she becomes friends with Osriel, and then she raffle stomps her way to becoming second in line to become the Phoenix, and then the old Phoenix retires, and she takes up the mantle, and so on and so forth. That is your quintessential power fantasy that a lot of these hyper nerds who hate Lyndon losing, who like self-insert themselves into the main character, that's something that they really want. It would be funny if it was Suriel because it's a woman and it will help them, I don't know, progress in their own IRL progression.
What I think would be really intriguing is we do get some perspective from Suriel and Unsouled. And so like if we had that part of Unsouled in this hypothetical book that doesn't exist from Suriel's perspective, if you still had that scene and you had her thoughts on Lyndon with the context of her growing up, because I think it's interesting how somebody that's a prodigy and probably didn't struggle sees the potential in Lyndon despite him having the deficiency. I think it's interesting how she still has that empathy for those people that are struggling when it seems like maybe she didn't struggle at least that much on her path to power.
Yeah.
So pretty interesting.
She probably had her own types of struggles, but your point stands, like how anybody who gets to the level of an Abaddon is going to be an exceptionally qualified individual who will have lots of wisdom and intellect and insight, right? I mean, they have to have insight if they're going to manipulate reality. So yeah, just I challenge Will to emulate a celestial being's thought process with millennia of experience to back them up. Good luck with that.
Perspective of God, I feel like is going to be pretty hard, but so we even get into what you don't like about the series? I feel like maybe we should skip over that.
No. Okay. So, what I don't like about Cradle is that I can't properly and successfully bet on the future of Cradle. It's kind of a cop out, but what do I truly not like about like the mechanisms of Cradle? I don't know. I think that certain decisions that Will has made with regards to his writing, I would have made different decisions, and that's okay. He is the experienced author. I am not. But like knowing what he did with Uncrowned, like he knew what he was doing. He knew what he was getting into. That's brave. I don't know. I can't even say. I didn't. I liked Uncrowned as a book, but I didn't like I didn't like the decision that I don't fucking know what I'm saying. I didn't like that he had to make that decision, like that's the route that he took. Like he could have.
I know what you're saying.
I don't know. This is also like a hindsight. This is also like a hindsight is 2020 situation too. Or like I know what the fallout's going to be, and like I know how stressful that must have felt, and like how annoying that must have been, knowing that he was going to take a break from Cradle, go and write the Elder Empire final 2 books that he's been putting off for half a decade, and then transitioning back into Cradle. I don't know. It's just I don't like that he put himself through that.
That makes sense, especially when you look at it now. When you finish Uncrowned, you immediately can just go read Wintersteel and everything's fine.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
From the perspective of somebody that's still waiting on Wintersteel to come out, Uncrowned is extremely frustrating. But to me, that speaks volumes about the trust from both sides. So like Will trusted his fans to continue to read, maybe angrily at first. But and then trusting that his fans would trust that he knew what he was doing, which I think many, if not most, did. And I think that I agree with the sentiment that Uncrowned is the worst standalone book, but it's still an amazing book with a lot of character growth in it.
It's the least complete start of a trilogy, of one of the trilogies.
Right.
In my opinion.
I feel that
we got the same feedback about Skysworn, by the way. Almost not as bad, but the same kind of feedback about Skysworn.
Right. That makes sense. I feel like Skysworn was definitely not as well received as some of the other earlier books as well, but perhaps
going back though, it's one of the best in terms of like lore, in terms of like hidden gems.
If I were an author, and I'm not anywhere near as experienced as Will,
aspiring,
right?
Yes, let's tell him how to do his job. This should be a section. Tell authors how to do their jobs.
Yeah, let's tell Will how to do his job real quick, even though we don't have anything to show for ourselves as far as books go. But the what I would have wanted to see is if you're going to have a book like Skysworn, then it needs to be 1.5 times as long as the.
Oh yes. Hey Will, this is how we all compromise on you writing longer books. If you're going to do what you want to do and you want to leave us hanging, new community caveat: if you want to end a book on a cliffhanger, the book has to be at least X amount of pages.
Right. I don't mean it like that specifically, but I mean the content having like this. If you're going to have that much setup in one book and then not have even a little payoff at the end, I think that is probably where people are most angry. So maybe give us the first 7th, maybe the first 5th of Underlord. I don't know how you could work that chronologically or even like with the story wise, but like have at least show that the payoff is coming, more so than promise that the payoff is coming. I don't know how to do that possible because
so it's complicated, right? I mean, like I see what you're saying. In regards to the payoff, like what kind of a payoff? Like, are we talking like an emotional payoff with regards to the story of the one book? Or are we talking about like a payoff in that we're further along our journey as a sacred artist? Because like one of the harder things about both Uncrowned and Skysworn, he doesn't advance as like along his path, along his power. Like he doesn't get stronger in terms of power, but he does get better as a sacred artist in some sense.
Right. I guess it's so hard because to me, I would have just smashed the 2 books together, 5 and 6. That would have just been not 5 and 6.
4 and 5, or also
Skysworn and Ghostwater.
Skysworn's book.
Yeah. I don't know why I said Underlord. So it would have been Skysworn then Ghostwater, right? Am I getting that?
Yeah, I don't know. Ghostwater was such a strong follow up, though. Ghostwater was my favorite book for a long time before Wintersteel.
Let's look at the 2 quote unquote worst books in this series, which So one is Skysworn, the other one is Uncrowned. Now let's look at the two quote unquote best books in this series. Arguable, I know. It's Ghostwater and Wintersteel, though, right?
A lot of people will say Underlord.
A lot of people think, okay.
Underlord's one of the top. Yeah. So for me, it's Wintersteel, Ghostwater, Underlord, Soulsmith, and then the rest. And I know that Will has a similar top 3 for himself.
Let's at least argue the point that, or give the point that the Ghostwater and Wintersteel are both extremely good, and they're on the top end of the spectrum as far as books go. And so both of those books proceed the quote unquote worst books of the series. So if you ever are in the state of mind where maybe this series felt underwhelming to you, then to me, it feels like the next book is probably going to be worth whatever misery you're convincing yourself that you're in from this current book. And it just goes to show that if a series feels underwhelming, then the next series is probably packed with twice as much goodness, I guess.
Structurally, Ghostwater felt the most complex to me, just because like it's one of the first times we're really splitting 2 storylines. Then you have Lyndon, who has to put together this construct that all culminates at the very end.
Yeah.
All the while hiding that Dross is going to be a presence. All the while catching Lyndon up in progression and making it believable. And like, I don't know. It just was super complex with the amount of stuff going on at the same time. I liked it
for sure.
Yeah, and I'm weird. Like the aesthetics of the setting impact how I feel about a book. Like when I think of Underlord, I think of like an overcast day, a bunch of like dark purple buildings. It's like whenever I'm playing World of Warcraft, one of my favorite places to level are like the tropical foresty levels, like Ungoro Crater or whatever, because it's like bright and vibrant, and it's like, it's like sunny. I'm like optimistic when I'm playing in those areas, and then like when I'm in, I don't know, some like shitty location in WoW where it's like all red, it's like everything's like monotone. I don't know, it doesn't do it for me as much. So Ghostwater again was super compelling in that regard. Anyway, I'm getting off topic, but so like Ghostwater was complex. Skysworn less so, even though you have a lot of lore elements being introduced, a lot of world building. Uncrowned was complex in the sense that you have 2 separate storylines that are merging together, but still are separate. You're trying to keep a reader engaged while engaging in a tournament that takes a long time. You're trying to cut out scenes that you don't think progress the story. And I don't know, you're also trying to give an emotional payoff at the end with like a huge battle. Because like we know that Lyndon's going to have a huge battle at the end, and then it ends up being both Lyndon and Yeren. Yeah, it's tough. It's being a writer is tough. I mean, I'm trying to write a book right now, and I've had to like make a deal with my mastermind group that I have to deliver a chapter a week, or like I owe them money, because I like will overthink, or I'll try and redo past chapters. It's just like the structure of putting it all together and making it work, and then editing. Like I realize that the first goal is to finish the book and then fix all that, but I just have a lot of respect for authors and their ability to get a lot of this stuff done. And so Will, Dakota, anyone listening, we love your shit. And the critiques that we have are only us, playing a doctor on TV, if you will.
Well, right. Yeah. We're making this because we're fans, not because we're critics. So hopefully they understand that.
They will. Right.
For
For sure.
So I think we have two more things.
Ooh, crazy theory time. Tinfoil hat theory time.
Yeah, time to put on the tinfoil hats, everybody. We've got this segment that's going to be evolving over time. For now, it's called One Crazy Theory. As we get closer to the release of another Cradle book, there's some betting that might ensue, which might involve another cringy yet embarrassing video from Bamf over here.
Gotta give the fans what they want.
Or the introduction of some sort of embarrassing thing that I'll be doing. And I'm probably a lot more likely to be wrong because, as you know, I'm not the expert here. So,
Dude, I mean, like, yeah, you could say that, but my track record for making bets on upcoming books is dog shit. I think it's mainly because I let Blue like decide what the terms. Well, okay, I let him decide what the terms were for the first bet, and then the community, through a democratic process, decided the second one, and I failed both times.
Right. So we've got one crazy theory from you, and then I'm going to use the crazy theory that you have to make my own up on the spot. So let's see what you got going.
Okay, so I've had this theory about Ethan for a while. I've talked about it in my videos, sort of, but I think that first of all, I think that the original sacred beast that the Aurelius clan like got its bloodline from, it was a spider. Like, I think at this point that's pretty well accepted. But I think that Ethan will be able to teleport along the web, like along his pure Madra web, as like one of his like movement techniques. So similar to how Yaren can use the moon bridge to teleport around, Ethan will be able to do that as just a matter of course, part of his like one of his skill sets. He's on the path of the Hollow King, which is a pure path, and he has a pure Madra web. His ability to sense the way, even as an underlord, teach people how to sense the way and understand when they are successfully sensing the way, makes me feel like his authority over the present, over awareness of the present, is so strong that I think he might not have the best abilities as a fox, being able to teleport long distances, but I think his mastery over the short-term teleportation, especially where his web of awareness is going to make him like an insanely difficult to deal with person. Because imagine like you're trying to fight him, right? He knows every move you're about to make. When you start to make the move, he knows what you're going to do. Now imagine he can instantly be anywhere within his web of influence. Super OP, which is what Ethan is. That's my tinfoil theory, that he will definitely be able to do that at some point. I thought he already could. I was wrong. So I'm going to push that theory down the road to either his current level of progression or once he becomes a sage.
Well, I don't have any information to shoot that down necessarily. So it sounds like a possible plausible theory to me. I just came up with a theory that I'm sure is going to get shot down right away.
I'll shoot it down if it doesn't feel plausible.
I'm used to getting shot down on the subreddit anyway, so we'll
honestly, me too. So
I was thinking that Lyndon seems to that Hangra Madra that he's recently learned how to quote unquote control seems to be kind of getting snowbally as far as how much Madra he's like taking in, and I think he's kind of getting greedy, which Lyndon has definitely has succumbed to greed in the past. I think that the problem with this is that when they figure out how to defeat the Dread God, that it's possible that he might try to merge with the Dread God. Why am I blanking on the thing that you get when you die?
Subject 1. Oh, merge with the remnant. They won't have remnants, but I like where you're going.
Have remnants.
Well, the subject 1 might be an advanced remnant of some sort because it's able to create so many bindings. But actual dread beasts don't produce remnants because their abilities manifest physically in their form. I think that might be similar with the dread gods. However, that might be something that Lyndon tries to do with subject 1 to get rid of it, is to absorb it into his spirit and consume it himself. But what you're getting at with him being greedy, the hunger aura of the labyrinth makes people greedy. It did with Jai Daisho, and then Tim the Swordman was able.
Tim.
Tim the Swordman Taylor. He commented on that he was always feeling greedy when he was in there. That's because being around that aura manipulates your abilities, or not your abilities, but your emotional state. It makes you greedier, makes you hungrier for more. Lyndon's already like that. His personality resonated so well with the hunger arm that he was able to easily merge it with himself. He was able to exert his willpower over it and rule it. So either Lyndon will have some sort of bloodline ability that will enable him to handle that better, or it will be a serious issue with him. Like, imagine this. Lyndon has a bloodline ability that keeps the Sacred Valley curse from draining him too quickly. But he has a psychological issue with getting dragon fever anytime he goes in the labyrinth. So he's the one guy who can keep himself strong, but he's also the one guy that you can't trust in there because he just wants to take everything. He's much more easily manipulated by subject 1. So like maybe he has he might have some sort of bloodline. He might have some sort of subject 1 bloodline. If subject 1 is a remnant, whatever creature it was might have had children that, or might have been a human that had children, and then that line was what helped inhabit Sacred Valley. I don't know.
Right. That actually there's something else I wanted to discuss. Maybe we'll save it for the next episode, but I will throw it out in the air just in case there's somebody in the comments section that wants to throw their own crackpot theory in. And that is, do you think that the inhabitants of Sacred Valley, the people that were born and grew up there, are limited to Jade because of the curse, or do you think that they could actually advance further than that? I guess, is the curse of Sacred Valley, quote unquote curse, do you think that it's more like training weights, or do you think it's just a curse? So are they better sacred artists once they are outside of the curse, or could they advance even further within there? And then, say if you're low gold, when you are inside the valley, somehow you make it to low gold, and then you leave the valley, are you high gold suddenly because of the curse was weighing you down, and now it's not, that kind of thing, I guess. Does that make sense to you?
It does. I've been rereading Unsouled a little bit to just rehash my knowledge. And remember how in the first few pages of chapter 1, it talks about how Elder Whisper sometimes signs off on hunting white foxes?
Yeah.
What would be the perfect remnant for a Way Clan Jade?
Probably a powerful white fox.
A white fox remnant.
Yeah.
So we know that sacred beasts will get stronger over time, no matter what.
That's really...
Trees do it. Well, what I'm getting at is that Elder Whisper is having people kill his own offspring before they get strong enough to produce a bindable remnant.
Yeah, that is a very interesting theory for sure. It makes sense. While I feel like every line that Will puts in his books is purposeful.
I know. It's, oh God, you can make so many. He also throws in some red herrings too. I'm not going to lie. He's led me down the wrong path many times.
And
many times.
To some videos of.
I can't even tell you how many awful theories I've had that this is a long time ago, back before the community got so big, but a long time ago, it was not the most impolite thing in the world to message Will directly and ask him a question. I don't recommend people do this. After a book drops, he'll be in the Discord. You can ask him questions then. Leave the man alone. But back in the day, I didn't listen to my own future advice, and I would ping him directly. And there were many videos that almost got made that didn't get made because I had the foresight to ask him first. And I never asked him like a direct question like that. Like at one point, I was curious if North Strider had a blood shadow. And I was curious if any of the monarchs possessed like dread god abilities or something. And so I asked him like a vague question that if he answered, it would give me enough information to feel comfortable making a video. And usually when I ask him vague questions, he gives me vague answers, and then we're both happy because I didn't ask him to, spoil anything, and he doesn't have to tell me to read and find out. Right. But this time he saw where I was going, and he's like, North Strider doesn't have a blood shadow. I will give you that one for free. And so it saved me from making a silly video that I would have to go back on later.
Awesome.
So thank you for that, Will.
All right. So our crackpot theories are out there. Feel free to add.
Next time, let's talk about what is that? Next time, let's talk about what you brought up in that. Do you think that people in Sacred Valley are incapable of advancing to gold within the valley? Or do you think that it's a matter of forced ignorance or forced lack of resources?
Right. So there's a couple of contributing factors that could be the reason, but we don't know. And we're definitely going to discuss that more at length in the next episode.
I want to get some fan feedback on this. Since everybody's writing fan fiction about Sacred Valley and everybody wants to talk about Sacred Valley. Little Blue, when she was a little baby Sylvan River Seed, she'd only been in the Lesser Treasure Vault for like less than a year. This is confirmed by Will. That doesn't make a lot of sense to me because that implies that somewhere in Sacred Valley, there is a harmony of aura types that will allow for a Sylvan River Seed to be born. Not only that, go ahead.
Isn't it mentioned that there are people that trade with people from outside the valley? But you don't think that could have been something that came from there?
No, unless Tim traded or like gave it to him or something, which I don't see him doing that. Where are they getting all of this crazy treasure stuff? And like the school had a really, really competent soulsmith who was able to create some pretty cool stuff that even now, based on our knowledge of soulsmithing, would be interesting. Like the invisible sentinel that could detect people and then attack them. That was a cool thing. There's a bunch of other cool stuff that they have. Like they have 1,000 Mile Cloud in their lesser treasure hall.
Lesser treasure vault, yeah.
Yeah, but nobody in Sacred Valley uses them. You don't see anything flying anywhere in Sacred Valley. So like they have all these super interesting things. Where do they get them from? So there's got to be parts of Sacred Valley that are like super cool. Like we know about the Torch Yard. So basically what I'm getting at is, where do you think Little Blue came from? Do you think she came from outside of Sacred Valley? Because what do we know about right outside Sacred Valley? It's the desolate wilds where everything's corrupted.
Right.
So I don't think she came from the desolate wilds. Where do you think she came from? Who had the skill to create the little habitat for her that was properly scripted? I don't know. I don't have a good answer. I'm interested to hear what the community thinks. Look at your face.
Yeah, I was like, I'm a little bit lost because I feel like this is those advanced book knowledge things that I was chasing after for you, or from you for the for the Cradle.
I'll give you another couple examples. There are remnants in Sacred Valley that have authority over space, which means they were remnants from creatures that either came from a line of sacred beasts or whatever that had authority over space. Your mic is like attacking my ears right now.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
It's like something was bumping it. Yeah.
Is it good?
Yeah, it's better. It's good now. And it was only like something was hitting it. Anyway, there are remnants in Sacred Valley that have advanced properties. They're super weak because of the drain. Okay. Elder Whisper has 5 tails. The white fox we saw at the beginning of the book has 3. That's not too far away from Whisper. We know Whisper's a true gold, but the fox wasn't even strong enough to be a jade or an iron or anything. It was running from coppers. So it's super weak. But would it be weak outside of the valley? No, it'd probably be like a jade or something. And so there's all these things in Sacred Valley that make it that tell about Sacred Valley's past. Like the artifact they picked up that was right outside the Nether Gate, that was basically like a placard explaining how to use a portal, just like a portal network, right outside of a door that opens every 10 years. Where else have we heard about a door that opens every 10 years that connects 2 parts of the world as part of a portal network? The Nether Gate is likely a broken portal. We're going to have to evacuate Sacred Valley. It's going to be hard to do. Akura aren't allowed to go in there. Maybe we fix the Nether Gate and portal people across the world.
Sounds like a setup. Maybe we get a little more soulsmithing to fix some scripts.
Yeah. Sacred Valley is super weird, and I really want to know more about it because it feels like it was artificially created to give a small group from an advanced civilization everything they could ever need.
By the way, Sacred Valley, very hard to replicate in Unreal Engine because valleys don't usually look like that. Just letting you guys know that's been very difficult. And
Will, how dare you? How dare you give us a river that is constantly fed by an ever storm atop a mountain, but there's no lake anywhere because the deepest that it gets is up to your chest. So that means that the river must disappear under Yoma somewhere, or like Yoma must use it as some sort of like irrigation tool to create, to water all the trees.
Don't forget the mountain range that's supposed to be 4 different peaks that is also inescapable except for by 4 other entrances by people that have basically superpowers. So that's hard too.
I'm thinking of like a Helm's Deep situation. Like you can't leave. Anyway.
It's tough. Okay, so one last thing we have, which we mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, which is the title contest. So right now it's called Pog Fantasy. Definitely work in progress on the name.
All right. Well, first of all, it can either be Pog Fantasy or the Progression Fantasy Podcast, which is a mouthful. However, these are working titles, and we want some help coming up with a better name. So take it away.
Yep. So we were going to kind of troll a little bit and send a signed copy of Unsouled, I believe.
I bought a signed copy off eBay, and we're going to give it away.
Yeah, so now you get one that's like signed by Will, but we were both just going to sign it ourselves as if we're somebody that matters.
Oh, yeah, that was going to be a funny joke where we were going to buy one, and then like we were both going to sign it and be like, surprise, it's not signed by Will, but it's signed by us. But no, I found a signed copy on eBay, and I bought it so it stays in the community.
Right. So if you send us a title and we like it enough to use it, we will send you the signed copy of the book, shipping included. As long as you don't live in like Antarctica or something. Well,
yeah, let's yeah.
We'll work with you. If you're living somewhere super far away or something like that, we'll work with you. Don't worry about it. But yeah, leave your suggestions below. We will have a Discord set up specifically for the podcast. By the time that this airs, that link will be in the description, and you can also send submissions in that way. We don't have a deadline on the contest yet, but when there is a deadline, we will make sure to mention that in the next episode, which we also don't know when is coming. But
yeah, let's talk about that for a hot second. Right now, we're committed to being consistent, but what that means is still up in the air. Are we going to be consistently doing this once a month? Consistently doing this once a week? Probably not any more consistent than that. We also don't know about what day of the week we'll be consistently doing this on. We don't know if we'll consistently stream it or just consistently record it. But we promise we will be consistent, and you'll get a steady stream of progression fantasy content, starting with Cradle going forward.
Right. So the thing we want most for this episode is feedback, what you want from something like this, including when is best for you to listen, how is best for you to listen or watch, and submissions for the contest and volunteers for the Unreal Engine project. So
yeah, like
that's pretty much
like what kind of sections do you want to see in the podcast? We plan on doing interviews if we get big enough, or if I can, shame authors into coming and talking to us. And yeah, I mean, that's basically it. Like, what do you want to see? What do you want to hear? Who, like, if I'm annoying, tell me I'm annoying. I know you guys love my content, but hate my face. So now we have a podcast that you can listen anywhere you find podcasts and not watch the video. So you can hear my content, but not look at my face.
right. Because everybody doesn't like looking at his face, right? So
I don't know. Cool.
So yeah, that would be the end of this episode of Pog Fantasy. But
Progression Fantasy Podcast.
Yeah, one of those two. And really, thanks guys for listening, and please provide any and all feedback in any way you see fit. And thanks again for watching.
See you next time.